When I fell ill and was hospitalized, Mary, my son's wife, and my granddaughter Emma came to visit me, and I smiled brightly. After exchanging greetings, I wondered about Mary's somber expression and her lack of the novel I had asked for during the visit. Mary, with an unnatural gaze, eventually mustered the courage to speak to me, but just as she began, Emma energetically interrupted by jumping onto my bed. Emma asked,
"Grandma, will you get better after the surgery?"
I replied reassuringly, "Oh, it's nothing serious, just a bit tired. But seeing your face has lifted my spirits." As I smiled and flexed my arms, Emma smiled happily too. After peering at my face for a while, Emma fell silent, her beautiful eyes looked thinking real serious. While continuing to smile, she asked me,
"Hey Grandma, do adults laugh when they're lonely?"
Surprised, I asked, "Huh? Why?" But Mary hurriedly took out her wallet from her bag. She gently lifted Emma from my bed, handed her some change, and said,
"Emma, go buy some juice,"
before sending her out of the hospital room. With a solemn expression, Mary then approached me and began recounting what she had just witnessed. "My name is Nancy. My husband Jason and I are both in our 50s, and we've never fought since our younger days, recognized by all as a loving couple. I call myself a freelance writer, specializing in travel-related articles. I've always been fascinated by the sound of the name, freelance writer, and now, I find myself immersed in writing, taking on assignments I find online. Jason works for an online gaming company, handling tasks like system development. But his job keeps him incredibly busy, often leading him to spend nights at the office when deadlines approach. We live near our son and his wife, with whom we share an excellent relationship. John and Mary often invite us for overnight trips and outings, planning activities that we enjoy together. Our granddaughter Emma always says how fun it is to be with Grandpa and Grandma, which never fails to bring a smile to my face. However, Jason always declines our son's invitations, citing his busy work schedule, leaving both me and himself disappointed. While our schedules rarely align for us to share meals, I deeply appreciate the hard work Jason puts in for our family, often working late into the night. While my husband works tirelessly from early morning to late at night, sweating it out, I enjoy the freedom of being a freelance writer without being bound by time constraints. It feels unfair to indulge in leisure trips with our son's family when I have the luxury of spare time. Sensing my sentiments, Jason always smiles with deep wrinkles etched on his face as if carved with laughter lines.
"Work feels like a hobby to me. So you don't have to worry about it."
"Yeah, thanks always."
"So, where are you heading for our next trip?"
"Well, next time, it's to a tourist spot that has seen an increase in visitors lately." Jason listens to my talk with a smile, nodding occasionally and interjecting appropriately. He's a great listener, sometimes showing surprise, sometimes nodding with deep interest. It would be such an honor if someone read my travel article and decided to visit the places I recommended. I said with enthusiasm, and he always responded with a delighted smile on his face. One day, while writing an article on my computer in my room, my fingers typing on the keyboard suddenly stopped. It felt like I was making more mistakes than usual. My body felt feverish, even though the air conditioning was set high. Despite taking deep breaths, I continued writing, but eventually, my fingers came to a halt. I recognized the signs from past experiences. I had a fever. I glanced back at the words on the computer screen, letting out a heavy sigh. With deadlines looming, I couldn't afford to rest just because of a fever. I pushed through and finished the article, but as soon as I completed my work, exhaustion overwhelmed me, and I slumped in my chair, eventually losing consciousness. Coincidentally, my son's family came by to share dinner and became concerned when I didn't answer the doorbell. Mary, who had a spare key, let herself in and found me collapsed. Without hesitation, my son and his wife rushed me to the hospital. The strain of pushing through while feverish had taken its toll, and I was diagnosed with temporary exhaustion. Due to severe headaches, the doctor recommended a 3-day hospital stay. When I contacted Jason, he had already returned home from work and couldn't find me, worrying about my whereabouts. He swiftly packed 3 days' worth of clothes and rushed to the hospital. Jason apologized sincerely, his voice filled with regret. He explained that his busy schedule wouldn't allow him to visit until the day I was discharged. I reassured him with a smile, saying, "Don't worry about it." If work demanded his presence, there was nothing to be done. With a smile, I reassured Jason not to worry. The next day of my hospitalization, my fever subsided, and I felt much better. Sitting on the clean hospital bed, I fidgeted, looking up at the ceiling or opening the drawers of the TV stand. I thought, maybe I could take a short walk around the hospital. Convincing myself, I strolled through the corridors until I found a small chair near the shop and restaurant area. Oh, it's too boring. Across from me, a man sat reading while a drip stand stood nearby. Ah, that reminds me, I had a novel I was reading at home. John wouldn't be at home due to work, so I decided to call Mary and ask her to bring the novel. I had given her a spare key, and it would be easy to explain where the book was. Mary readily agreed when I called her from the hospital's public phone. Returning to my room, I started reading a picture book placed there. It was a "Where's Waldo?" book, and as I earnestly searched for Waldo, 2 hours had passed. Mary came to visit, and I looked up from the book, feeling a strange sense of guilt for what felt like the most unproductive use of time in my life. I returned the book, smiled at Mary and Emma, and said, "Thank you so much, Mary." After greeting them, I couldn't help but wonder about Mary's somber expression and the absence of the novel I had asked for. Mary, with an unnatural gaze, eventually mustered the courage to speak to me, opening her mouth to convey something. But just as if to intervene, my granddaughter Emma jumped onto my bed with her small body, full of vigor.
Grandma, will you feel better after the surgery?
Huh? Oh, it's nothing serious. Just feeling a bit tired, that's all. But seeing your face has completely cheered me up. I smiled and flexed my arms, and Emma, seeing that, smiled happily too. After peering at my face for a while, she fell silent, her eyes looked like thinking something serious. I continued to smile as I looked into her beautiful eyes as if pondering something.
Hey Grandma, do adults laugh when they're lonely?
Huh? Why do you ask?
Because, when I went to Grandpa's house earlier, there was a girl I didn't know, and Grandpa and she was having a party together. Even though you're in the hospital, Grandpa seemed really happy.
I see.
Grandpa is sneaky. Having a party when you're not around. I saw it. They were having amazing food and delicious-looking juice at home.
I didn't know how to respond to Emma's confession. Unable to come up with a clever reply, I realized my forced smile looked strained, trying not to let on that I was clearly speechless. Mary lifted Emma from my bed, handed her some change from her wallet, and sent her out of the room to buy juice. Then, with a solemn expression, she approached me and began recounting what she had just witnessed. Mary and Emma received my message and used the spare key to enter my house. Since it was a weekday afternoon, they assumed nobody would be home and entered without much thought. However, upon entering, they noticed neatly arranged women's shoes at the entrance. Faint laughter from Jason could be heard coming from the living room. Wondering if he had taken the day off, they approached the living room. Mary thought perhaps Jason was watching TV and laughing. But what they saw through the slightly ajar living room door was Jason and an unfamiliar woman sitting closely on the sofa. The woman seemed to be leaning into Jason's arm, whispering something softly into his ear. Mary instinctively grabbed Emma and left the house immediately. Mary later confessed,
On the way here, Emma asked me why we didn't greet them. I panicked and said that Grandpa was feeling lonely because Grandma wasn't feeling well, so they were pretending everything was fine.
Mary looked genuinely apologetic as she lowered her head. I quickly reassured her. It's okay, don't worry about it. I'm sorry too. Emma, holding a juice, returned to the room with a happy expression on her face. Emma spent time on my bed, chatting about trivial things and laughing happily. Mary watched them with a complex expression, but I quietly reassured her. Don't worry, I'm fine. After only I left the room, the atmosphere suddenly became quiet again. I opened Where's Waldo, not because I wanted to read it specifically. I didn't seek to find Waldo, but I needed to somehow sort out the inexplicable emotions bubbling up inside me. As I gazed at the crowded illustrations in the book, my vision gradually blurred with tears until I could see nothing. 3 days after being hospitalized, I was discharged safely. Jason, who took time out of his busy schedule to pick me up on discharge day, spent time with me with his usual calm smile, so I carried on as usual. Like any weekday morning, I prepared breakfast for Jason and saw him off at the front door as usual. It seemed like just another typical day, but beneath the surface of that routine, my plan was starting to take shape. The catalyst for the plan was John. Mary must have told him about the possibility of his father cheating. He had quietly simmered with anger when I was in the hospital.
Let's teach Dad a lesson,
John proposed. Intrigued, I leaned in. Perhaps it wasn't about being angry about the affair, but about confronting Jason with the truth and unsettling him. With John's cooperation, the plan to catch Jason in the act of cheating was quietly progressing. Firstly, John consulted with a lawyer and hired a detective for investigation, which resulted in obtaining photos of the affair scene in a short period. In a detective agency located within a rented building in the bustling district, an elderly man handed me a document summarizing the investigation results. Jason in the photos wore his usual calm smile, walking joyfully with a woman I didn't recognize through the streets. Despite obtaining conclusive evidence, I couldn't bring myself to blame him. Being cheated on is undoubtedly saddening, yet it's a fact that he has worked hard to provide for the family. Should I overlook the gratitude I feel for his efforts and focus solely on the infidelity aspect of our marriage? If I confront him with the evidence of his affair and it leads to divorce, what would become of my current life? After leaving the office, I stood still in the bustling downtown, feeling like I had lost my way. Even if I were to condemn my husband based on the results of this infidelity investigation, what would become of my life? With such uncertain future looming over me, I sat facing my computer in the living room. My job as a writer consisted of small articles and columns, but I wondered if I truly earned trust by persisting in it for so long. The requests never stopped coming in. Yet, as I reread the finished articles and columns, I let out a deep sigh. I didn't believe I had the talent as a writer anymore. There was a time when I excelled at weaving words and creating pieces that touched readers' hearts. But lately, I felt like something was missing. As I revisited my past work, I couldn't help but feel anxious about whether my talent had somehow disappeared. Was it because I was emotionally weakened by my husband's infidelity? Despite questioning myself, I shook my head involuntarily. It wasn't that I had changed. Perhaps, in this process of searching, adversity and setbacks were necessary. When I first started working as a writer, it was incredibly enjoyable. Transforming my thoughts into words and having someone read them brought me immense joy. However, such enjoyable moments couldn't last forever, and there would inevitably be periods of stagnation and trials along the way. As I mulled over such thoughts, the home phone rang. It was the detective I had hired for the infidelity investigation. Though his face was mostly a blur, I remembered his air of suspicion. Without much preamble, the detective asked,
"Have you read the final line?"
I haven't really gone through it thoroughly," I responded. The detective explained,
"Given that my task was an infidelity investigation, I initially thought it unnecessary, but I happened upon an intriguing fact. If you aren't aware, I presumed your son wouldn't be either, so I subtly included it in the report.
Ah, I see. The detective continued.
Due to my profession, I've conducted numerous infidelity investigations, and the behavioral patterns of cheating men are almost identical. It's likely due to similar brain structures. However,
I could discern the detective's amusement as he chuckled over the phone.
Your husband's behavior has been peculiar since the first day of surveillance. Normally, my job would be to capture evidence of infidelity and call it a day, but I had a discussion with a lawyer, and given our firm's 10th anniversary, I decided to extend the service.
The detective explained. After hanging up, I revisited the infidelity investigation materials. As I read through the contents, I took a deep breath. I couldn't help but feel deeply affected by the words my granddaughter Emma had said to me. Her clear eyes, devoid of any doubt, had posed such a straightforward question: why do you smile when you're lonely? A month later, I informed Jason that I was going on a trip with my son's family and smiled at him as he saw me off at the doorstep of the house. Pulling a lightly packed carry-on bag, I headed towards the station. Drifting aimlessly on the train, I gazed at the scenery passing by the window. In my youth, trains were always our mode of transportation for dates with my husband. Until we got married, we never owned a car, so we always met at a quaint cafe near the station, known for its specialty teas. The menu meticulously listed names like Candy and Dinbra alongside each type of tea leaf. We'd both arrive 30 minutes before our usual meeting time, and he always ordered Maloo tea. Maloo, derived from the hibiscus flower, brewed into a blue tea reminiscent of tropical seas, accompanied by thinly sliced lemon that, when lightly squeezed, magically turned pink.
Beautiful, isn't it?
My husband murmured, looking not at the beautifully adorned Maloo tea but at me. I couldn't help but smile wryly at his usual remark. Looking back now, we must have seemed like foolish lovers, but back then, I was undeniably happy. Despite the anger and frustration of being cheated on, what comes to mind is always Jason drinking Maloo tea back then. I enter a cafe without much thought, looking for something familiar. Maloo tea isn't on the menu. Opting for a menu simply labeled black tea, with no mention of specific leaves, I sit down and let my gaze wander over the words printed in my book, now barely recognizable to my mind. I killed time like this for a while. Staying in the same cafe feels uncomfortable, so I move on to another. Maloo tea isn't offered there either. I wander the streets absent-mindedly, entering random cafes that catch my eye. And as I scan the menu items, I feel a slight disappointment in not finding the name I've been unconsciously searching for. The Maloo tea that resides in my memories is slowly fading into vague hues in my mind. At night, I returned home. As usual, I inserted the key into the lock and took off my shoes at the entrance before heading to the living room. There, as expected, I found Jason and a woman. They were both speechless, frozen in time with their eyes wide open. Soft classical music played from the built-in speakers, and stylish hors d'oeuvres adorned the table, indicating they had finished their meal. Steam rose from the blue mallow tea they seemed to have been about to drink together. Neither Jason nor I spoke. The serene music filled the living room as we shared a strange moment of just gazing at each other. Eventually, John arrived, making a racket, and upon spotting Jason, he exaggeratedly sighed. Mary, standing behind John, peered anxiously at the scene.
Hey, what kind of party is this? Don't mind if we join, right?
Hold on a second. What's your intention here? All of a sudden.
As Jason got up from the sofa, the woman beside him grabbed his sleeve, looking frightened. She was a plain, younger woman than me, with unremarkable features. She wore faded jeans and a slightly worn-out hoodie. Barely wearing any makeup, she whispered in a modest voice.
No, that's not true.
His lover interjected.
We don't have the kind of relationship everyone here is thinking about.
John replied.
Oh really? But we have some evidence, like these photos.
He proudly held the photos in front of her face. The images depicted the two of them strolling through the streets and dining together, looking close. The woman, avoiding eye contact with the photos, smiled faintly with a hint of sadness.
I may not be famous, but I'm a stage actress.
She confessed. Jason explained.
Yeah. She's an actress. And she's studying cheating experiences for a role. That's why she's giving acting lessons on infidelity. Don't get the wrong idea.
Surprised by the unexpected revelation of her being a stage actress, John and Mary exchanged glances. The woman calmly explained the sequence of events. She admitted to having meals alone with Jason in this house and engaging in activities that resembled dates in town. However, she insisted that it was all part of her role preparation as an actress, with Jason's cooperation. There was indeed no concrete evidence proving a romantic relationship between Jason and the woman. When I asked why Jason would cooperate with such a thing, the woman, who had seemed plain until then, suddenly gave me a seductive look.
Wasn't it because he felt lonely?
She said. Lonely?
Jason said so. His wife is always traveling and doesn't pay attention to him. He said he doesn't have time to be with his wife because of work.
I knew that whenever I, who usually works from home, mentioned going on a trip, Jason would take advantage of the opportunity to invite the woman over to our house and indulge in luxury. He often tells me he has to stay at the office for work, but I know he's actually meeting with the woman. I know that when Jason always says he's busy with work, it's all lies. He actually finishes work on time every day and spends his evenings out late playing around. I know that every kind smile from my loving husband is a lie. But if I were to confront him about all of this now, everything would break and disappear like bubbles. Was I under a spell from the moment I met him? That mallow tea we drank at the cafe felt like magic. It was so beautiful. If I were to leave this place now with a smile, saying, "Oh, it was nothing. Sorry for misunderstanding," it would be like giving tacit approval to his affair. Struggling to find the right words to respond, Mary comes over and embraces me.
Nancy, it's okay. Don't force yourself. People don't pretend to smile when they're feeling lonely or sad. Those who wear expressions opposite to their emotions are usually lying.
Despite it being baseless, Mary's words made me smile involuntarily. Right, that's true. People don't smile when they're lonely. I can't imagine living as a partner with someone who justifies filling the void in their heart by pretending everything's fine with a smile. This is fine. I've been pretending to be fooled by Jason's kind smile all this time. Acting as a foolish wife. Perhaps I've been deceiving myself into believing I couldn't live without it. Always a housewife, continuing a hobby-like job, I've become too accustomed to living comfortably and have almost forgotten how I truly wanted to live. Maybe it's time to think more realistically about publishing what I learned during my travels as an article for the world to read, and to envision a future where someone would read it. Turning away from my always gentle and kind husband, I must now become independent. I can't believe his lies anymore. I'm divorcing you, Jason. I declare.
I've told you multiple times. It's a misunderstanding. Just because I'm helping her with her acting practice doesn't mean it's evidence of cheating. And I can't afford any alimony.
Well, it may not be enough evidence for alimony in court. But John and Mary are on my side. And even our relatives wouldn't side with you given the circumstances. Jason gives a resigned smile and runs his hand through his hair. Suddenly, I hand over the dossier from the detective's investigation and point to the contents. Looking down at the part 1 pointed at, Jason's fake smile finally fades, and his face turns pale. It's unrelated to the affair investigation, but it's Jason's savings balance that the detective uncovered. His savings exceeded $1 million. So, you won the lottery a year ago. Congratulations. $1 million is quite
Well, this is.
You've also been returning home from work on time every day and taking a lot of paid leave, it seems. Did you think having money would make everything okay if your affair got exposed? I glare sharply at his mistress. Even in a normal divorce, I'd get $500,000. If you don't admit to the affair, I'll push through the courts no matter the cost. But if you admit to the affair here and now, I'll only go after Jason for alimony. You were after Jason's money anyway, right? After a moment of contemplation, the woman nods slightly with her head bowed. It seems John and Mary are struggling to keep up with the sudden turn of events. So, to put it simply, I'm divorcing Jason. That's all there is to it. After that, the divorce was finalized smoothly, and alimony was paid. Property division was settled, and although Jason was left with a substantial amount of money, he had already lost motivation for work after winning the lottery and was demoted to a less significant position. The woman he had been dating for a while also decided to break up with him as Jason's financial situation deteriorated over time. Since her name never gained much recognition in the public eye, it seems she spent her life without achieving much success as an actress. John and Mary suggested that I move in with them, but I graciously declined and opted to rent an apartment for myself.
Are you sure you don't want to live together?
John asked. With all the money I have, I could travel around the country freely. I replied. I'm determined to live my life to the fullest from now on because it's my life. Pretending not to see someone's true colors or turning a blind eye to lies doesn't suit me anymore. I intend to communicate my thoughts clearly to those around me in the future. Currently, I'm enjoying my new career as a traveling journalist, a job I had given up on for years due to household chores and child-rearing responsibilities. I receive replies and supportive emails from readers, along with letters like,
I visited the same place.
Each time I read them, my once blue-tinted heart gradually turns into a warm red, reminiscent of lemon-infused mallow tea, with a hint of lingering sourness but clear warmth spreading throughout.